Well, good evening, everybody. I darn near didn't make it because Mr. Suhay showed up at the door unexpectedly because his cell phone had a mishap. And I'm still the tech department. But there's no, hey Peggy, there's no saving Mr. Suhay's cell phone tonight. So I just raced up the stairs to you guys. So here we go. I have 3 stories to read tonight, and I don't know what kind of order they're in. It kind of doesn't matter. I just know what kind of note I want to end on, so I'm going to mix and match. This is a not so easy, capital E, capital Z, holiday road trip. This is from January 11th, 2015. I want to take a moment to thank the Virginia Department of Transportation and the makers of its toll transponders for an incredibly memorable, at times downright hilarious, 5-day Easy Pass experience between Christmas and New Year's. We decided to spend $35 on an Easy Pass to save time on our trip to visit family in New Jersey and celebrate New Year's Eve in New York City. I should have known the moment I saw that they spelled it E-Z and not easy, that something in Denmark was overripe and liable to get a little bit stinky as time wore on. To be fair, it was easy to buy one at the local hardware store. It was simple to install using the diagram. It was a breeze to pump dollars into the online account. Thus, my husband and I embarked on our trip in a minivan packed with 3 of our 4 sons and 2 of their girlfriends. We were buoyed by our expectations, fantasies of how we would easily flow past the special toll booths in Easy Pass only express lanes and merge into the glory of unfettered speed. And yet, with about 99 bottles of imaginary beer still on the wall, we reached the first toll at the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, and we were told to do the U-turn of shame. As we pulled up to the toll booth, the attendant informed us our unit didn't scan. We took it off the windshield, and she scanned it by hand, thus proving that it worked, and sadly, she would be the only attendant able to scan that unit by hand. So began hours on hold with VDOT to try to figure out what was going wrong. I'm not sure how they calculate that 8-minute wait time for a human. My best guess is football minutes multiplied by molasses and divided by ice age. Because we believed things would go more easily, I didn't have any single bills or change for tolls. That made things really special. After we'd been in New Jersey for a day, I managed to get someone from VDOT on the phone who told me, "Oh, I'm so very sorry, but it seems that you have one of those what we like to call problem cars. You might try moving the transponder around to different locations on the windshield," the VDOT specialist suggested. "Try the bottom of the windshield or maybe the very top on the passenger side." For the next 2 days, we did the transponder ballet across the windshield to no avail. At every toll booth, my husband would say to the attendant in his happy tone, "Hi, I have Easy Pass. Is it working?" "No, it's not," would be the inevitable reply. "Ah, what a surprise," he would say. "So does that mean it's free?" No. If we were lucky, he would then just hand over the cash and drive on. But if not, the attendant would get a long lecture in civics while we waited. There's a reason they call it a toll. It took one on everybody. We got to sit stock still in DC area traffic, watching cars fly by us in the express lane next to a large friendly sign that said, 95 express lanes, pick up your Easy Pass today. What could be easier than standing still in traffic far from a rest stop that you really, really, really need. In the end, it took a friend on Facebook to unearth a diagram from the internet that explained how our windshield, like those of some Audis, other Chevrolets, Oldsmobiles, Pontiac, Mercedes, Buicks, BMWs, and Volvos, all made between 1995 and 2000, had a UV coating that made the transponder totally unreadable. Who knew? At long last, on the dead last hole of the trip just north of Richmond, my husband wrenched the transponder from the windshield, stuck his arm out the window into the pouring rain, and waved it at the toll booth as we passed. Ping! Green light. His largely unprintable response was drowned out by the laughter from everyone in the vehicle. Thanks, VDOT, for the most unforgettable trip ever. The joys. So this one is just all near and dear to my heart. The Little Prince passes from generation to generation and now to film. This is from December 10th of 2014. As families worldwide get the first look at the film debut of The Little Prince via a trailer released on YouTube, a wave of nostalgia may follow. One sees clearly only with the heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye, says the fox to the Little Prince in Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's French children's classic. As I watched the trailer in French, a language I don't speak, it was hard to see what was in front of me on the computer screen because my heart took me back through a montage of how this book has followed me from childhood to motherhood and translated into my relationship with my eldest son. The Little Prince is the first book I ever read all on my own. My mother, who speaks fluent French, gave me the English version after reading the book to me in French with her own translations as she went along, and I was about 6 years old at the time. I didn't understand the book very well then. However, over the years, from time to time, my mother would advise me to reread it because, she said sagely, you'll find something new in this book every time you read it. And she was spot on. Case in point is that in the book, the Little Prince asks the narrator to draw a sheep and rejects several attempts before the man gets so frustrated trying to please the boy that he tosses off a picture of what is essentially a box with holes in it in which the perfect sheep resides. The Little Prince is thrilled with this result. The narrator in the book and I were equally perplexed when I was a child, but as an adult, I would learn that the passage in the book is parenthood and all of our daily interactions in a nutshell. As a child, I preferred the drawing of the actual sheep and not the box. So I could not understand why the prince loved the box image so much. Oh, sure, he explained that everything on his planet was very small and this sheep would fit. However, until I had children of my own, I failed to really see the sheep in all its glory as a metaphor for beauty being in the eye of the beholder. It also reminded me not to overthink life too much. Sometimes we labor to make a perfect sheep when a box with holes will suffice. As parents, we try and find the perfect holiday gift, only to find out worry and money were lost on a child who was better pleased with the big box in which to play for the next week. That's because too often we can't see what's in a child's mind quite as well as we think that we can. The book also teaches us that taming something and to be tamed by another doesn't mean being enslaved, but rather becoming unique in all the world to one another. Sharing this book with my son made us at once tame and unique to each other, and sometimes to all the world. When my oldest son, Zoltan, now 21, was just 4 years old, we lived on a sailboat in Florida, and I read The Little Prince to him and his little brother, who was just 2 at the time. Zoltan got more out of it being older. Every day when we went to the beach, we would take a stick and draw a sheep, aka a rectangle with several circles or holes on the side in the sand. Ian would toddle over and accidentally kill the sheep as he tried to give them water through the holes. Drawn by the constant sheep battle, it never failed that someone would come and ask Zoltan if he was drawing Legos in the sand. He would then tell them that they were sheep. Some would then sit and talk with him about the little prince, while others smiled at me and asked if he had been evaluated for a disorder. To the latter, I would say, he's fine, he's just very well read. Because the trailer for the film is in French, which I still don't speak, I contacted Zoltan at Virginia Commonwealth University, where he's currently a double major in international justice and French, for a translation. Over the course of a Facebook chat session before his exam, Zoltan took the time to do the same thing my mother once did for me as he translated the trailer's story. When I asked if he remembered reading the book with me, he said, "I remember the title, but not much else, but now I'm looking for it in French to read again when I can really appreciate it." So we all know what's going to be in his Christmas stocking as soon as I can get to a bookstore. Then we chatted about what I remembered about the book and other things that have nothing to do with the book at all. It was one of the best mommy moments I've had across the childhoods of 4 boys, because it was as if I'd gone off in my spaceship to search the universe in search of friendship, love, and companionship, and come to a place where it was there in a perfect box. Because reading with your children is the universe in a series of small packages that we can hand across generations, languages, and universes as we learn to see each other with our hearts wide open. Read with them. Read with them when you think they're not listening. Read with them when you think you're not listening, but read with them. Choosing gardens over cleaning to celebrate the spring equinox. This is from March 20th, 2014. On the spring equinox, the gap between childhood and adulthood is at its widest, with kids trying to run out the door to school in celebratory beach attire, even as visions of cleaning, gardening, and muddy prints on the wood floor dance in the heads of parents. In my experience, the best memories of childhood are inherently messy. Rare is the child who saw this morning's Google Doodle celebrating the spring equinox, or heard the words first day of spring and thought, "Yay, I get to go through all my old clothes to see what still fits and do spring cleaning." In my experience, the best memories of childhood are, as I said, messy. As I look outside at the chilly, glum, damp morning, I can't help but think of how differently kids and parents view this change of season. Personally, I'm still with the kids as far as getting elbow deep in dirt while wrecking the knees of jeans is concerned. I've always thought it best to find common ground with kids, and spring is my favorite time to do that because I'm a gardener who takes the term common ground literally. In the spring, at the end of the day, you should smell like dirt, wrote Canadian poet Margaret Atwood, and I completely agree. It often seems that kids and house pets take Miss Atwood's sentiment a few steps further by transferring much of the dirt into the house just as parents click into a kind of possessed spring cleaning mode. I've never been a great cleaning fan. While I admire those who are, we don't take our shoes off and leave them at the front doors. I've seen many local moms demand. To me, if a spring post-gardening adventure is done right, the result is both parent and child needing to be hosed down, shoes and all. My fixation with spring planting comes from being a New York City 9th floor apartment dwelling kid whose first meaningful experience with dirt came in the form of a styrofoam cup with a bean seed in it at PS 40 in Manhattan. Having a mother who was a fashion designer for Macy's meant never having to say, I played in the dirt. There were no mud pies, only manicures, white tights, carefully pressed skirts, and Mary Janes in which you could see your reflection. In our house, the greatest Mother's Day story of all times comes as a result of my husband, after years of gifts that were too awful for words. A faux leopard print hat does spring to mind. He decided to give the boys a try and had them ask me what I wanted. Dirt. I told them, I want potting soil and I feel too guilty to spend the money on it for myself. That year, I got bags of dirt for Mother's Day. This forever scandalizing my poor dear friend Margaret Pigeon, who asked me what I got from hubby and has called him every year since to tell him, yes, that's great, but buy flowers too. My love of spring dirt was passed down to me by my grandma Annie, who lived in Passaic, New Jersey. She and my grandpa Frank were natural-born gardeners. She tended the vegetables, he the prize roses and other flowers. Spring was when we drove from New York City to New Jersey, and I discovered the joys of planting, the heady smell of wet earth, and the feel of plunging my hands into the deep, rich, carefully turned soil. There was also the annual spring hose fight between Grandma and Grandpa, during which I would make sure that I was thoroughly drenched and muddy. Gardening has very different meanings to my spouse. When Robert says gardening, what he means is raking, clearing the gutters, and bagging the leaves until everybody drops. To me, gardening means drawing up a new crazy garden plan with my sons, using a book that my mother-in-law gave me when I was first a mom some 19 years ago. It's a great book. It's called Roots, Shoots, Buckets, and Boots. Gardening Together with Children. It's by Sharon Lovejoy, and you need it. You need it, Peggy. You need the book. Thanks to that book, we have grown a circular-shaped, pizza-themed garden of herbs and veggies for using on our pizzas. We've created a sunflower and morning glory summer tent. However, our perennial favorite is to plant moonflowers, which bloom at night as big as dinner plates. They spiral up the pillars in front of our house. On summer nights, the blooms attract the lime green lunar moths. For us, spring starts in January, when the first nursery catalogs arrive, and this year, the seeds in their envelopes on the kitchen counters have been calling to us like a siren singing to a sailor from the rocks. Plant us now, the seeds called to my son Quinn just a few weeks back when temperatures in Norfolk, Virginia reached 70 degrees. That was when I got to teach him about the old farmer's almanac, weather patterns, and how to avoid being fooled into planting too soon and have everything die of the cold. I read a Mark Twain quote to Quinn this morning when he came to see me, seeds in hand, asking if we could plant today. In spring, I have counted 136 kinds of weather inside of 24 hours, said the author. We're going to hold off just a bit longer. But planting with kids is one of the great wonders of parenthood because you get to experience so many things through Mother Nature and her rose-colored glasses. Together in the garden, we learn how to sow, how to nurture, and reap. It's an opportunity to see past the mess and clothing stains to all the memories and possibilities that a handful of earth contains. So, Quinn has had a reformation, a resurgence, a rebirth of his interest in gardening, like so many people during the apocalyptical, pandemical fiasco that we're all living in. Everybody suddenly discovered or rediscovered baking, but a lot of people rediscovered gardening because they started worrying about the food supply. And so Quinn, who was paying attention to the news pretty early on, said, you know that gardening thing you do every year? I said, yeah. He said, what are you planting this year? I said, well, I'm thinking about planting some veggies this year in addition to some other things. And he said, can I help? And of course, anytime a kid says, can I help? That's just like, that's catnip to a mom. Should be to a dad too, but not being a dad. I speak from the mom's perspective. But all of the things where I say a mom does, a dad does. I'm not picking sides here. So Quinn helped me plant everything in this year. We had given his dad for Christmas a hydroponic gardening kit because he'd said he was interested in doing that on the sailboat that he lives on now. But time went by and the pandemic started and he was getting on the tugboat and he showed up one afternoon to say goodbye. And he had the box with him and he said, turns out I can't really do this on the boat because I can't leave it running while I'm away, the electricity. And so Quinn and I decided that we were going to turn that into part of not only our spring gardening project, but I made it into a botany class for him to supplement what he was missing now that he's not in school. Now we're on summer break now, but back then school had just gone on hiatus because of the pandemic and they were trying to learn things online and it was just a little tough. So we made up a chart or actually he did, and he started to track what we planted in the dirt and what we planted in the hydroponics in the living room and to see what grew faster. And now we're trying to see which is going to give fruit faster because he found that the hydroponics sprouted right away, but they're not as strong as the plants that are growing outside in the sun and the dirt. He learned that with hydroponic tomatoes and other plants, you have to pet them. Yes, you have to pet your hydroponic plants. And do you know why? Anybody? I'll tell you why. You convinced me. I'll tell you why. It's because when your plants are outdoors, they have the breeze no matter how light or how strong it is. And when those stems are blown around, they get stronger, just like us. That which does not kill us makes us stronger, right? So that's what happens. So he learned that you have to pet your plants if they're indoors and you want them to grow stronger stems because you're simulating the wind. So he's been watching the water levels and he's been watching the plant food levels. And then every day he wakes up before it gets hot out and he waters the whole garden. And then we've gone through and made sure that we're not only planting foods that we can eat, we've also got all of our herbs going, cilantro and mint and chives and green onions and oregano, basil, the whole 9 yards of all those things. 4 kinds of tomatoes. We've already got eggplants, the Japanese eggplants that we're about to pick and put on the grill. And golly, got all kinds of stuff. Sunflowers are going to grow out front and all the flowers are still there. But we also started last year growing sponges. Yes, we started growing loofahs. So we have loofahs and we have cantaloupes and we have a lemon tree. And now Quinn's decided that he's researching fruit trees because he wants to plant some fruit trees in the backyard. And I am down with that. He wants to make a Zen garden and he wants to make, grow fruit trees. So that's what that grew into from when he was younger. That was what? So that was 2015, so 5 years ago, and now he's 16 years old, and it stuck. It worked. So each one of them has taken their turn at getting interested in the garden, and it's Quinn's turn to be the super gardener this year. Hey, Jay. So if you have any opportunity whatsoever to garden with your kids, I highly recommend it. You can still get stuff to grow. There are still seeds you can plant. And the moonflowers that I spoke of, this was the year that we didn't think we'd get moonflowers because nobody had the seeds because they all came from overseas. So we just got them 2 weeks ago and now we have moonflowers and we're really looking forward to the lunar moths. And we already have the praying mantises all over. And Quinn expanded it all to bird watching and we have clear bird feeders that stick to the window. Peggy, you need to get one for the kids. They're on Amazon. I'll post the link in the comments. But the bird feeder is clear, and it suction cups to the window, and man, that thing's been through every storm, and it stayed there. And so you sit inside, and the birds come up, and they literally feed right on the window, and the kids can watch them, and you put your bird book right there on the counter and make a little journal for them, and they can keep track of the birds, and it rocks. So those are my recommends for tonight. I'm so glad you're all here. Drew a little bit of crazy at the beginning. And I will see you all tomorrow night with some fresh stories. Good night.